We're in Goodna Cemetery. I'm just more interested in the old graves. I don't want to film any recent graves. I've never been here before. I drove past it. Some very old graves here. I don't want to walk on them. So, in this, what interests me about this graveyard is I ghost hunted Wolston Park Asylum, and a lot of people that were died in Wolston Park. We're talking 50,000 people, man, died at Wolston Park. Are buried here, and a lot of their graves aren't marked. I think their graves are just numbers. I'm trying to work out whether this is it or not. So yeah, I'm not going to film any new graves. I just want the old ones. This cemetery is meant to be crazy haunted, and if you read about this cemetery on the internet, people get scratched, people get bruised, all sorts of crazy stuff happens. I come down here last night at 12 o'clock at midnight to do this ghost hunt, but the police pulled up behind me and had a chat to me, and you know, this graveyard does shut at 10 o'clock. So I had to come back down and redo it before 10 o'clock at night. I wanted to do it last night at midnight, but it was just the police basically. The police were really cool. They just said, look, people are going to call us all the time because of the light, whatever, you know, so just have to do it now. That's okay, it's pretty quiet. Right, here's the headless statue. Now the story behind this was, it was vandalised by some arsehole, and the vandal ripped the head off an angel. (1922). This cemetery is old, man. Like, this is very old. So, God forgive whoever done that. But if the person who vandalised this took the head off, if they fell down some stairs and broke both their legs, I wouldn't really care. Cut the head off. There's rumoured to be something bad in here that a few people have experienced. Yeah, so this is one of the most haunted places in Brisbane. And this is the bit I wanted to go to. I want to try and be careful, because the problem with this graveyard is, and I could be wrong, but from what I've read, they've lost a lot of where bodies are. And that's a big problem, especially with these graveyards around Brisbane and that, is there's just bodies that have just lost to stone and nobody's found them. So we've got these little markers here. And they're marking some grave, I'm pretty sure. Oh, 445. So I'm going to stand back here because I'm really after where the bodies of the Wolston Park Lunatic Asylum are buried, because I've got a message from. See, all down in here are all bodies. They've just lost the gravestones. It's crazy. So I'm trying to... This didn't look like the ones I saw on the internet. But these do have just a number on them, and I was told that the Wolston Park people that were buried, taken from Wolston Park and relocated here. It was meant to be, apparently they're saying it was 2,800, but the Goodna grave people are saying there's only 280, there's a zero missing. So I don't know. If there's any spirits here with me, feel free to come and have a chat. I'm holding this in my hand, and you can talk, whisper, make yourself known. I come in your cemetery. It's not mine, it's not the living's, it's yours. Apparently there's something real bad in here. A real bad spirit. This could be it. I'll go walk down here. Yeah, that's the stones, that little stone there. It's the ones that I saw on the internet. So we're going to walk the whole graveyard. We're just not going to film anything new, any new graves. So all through here, I think, I could be wrong, from what I've read, there's just bodies everywhere. They've just lost the they've just lost markers and so yeah. But I want to go make sure that I've got the right spot. It's just a rock. The good thing about here is I've mowed the grass, so I can walk pretty silently. Any spirits here, feel free to come and whisper into this thing I'm holding in my hand. There'll be a bit of traffic around, guys, and stuff, but it can't be helped. So I'm going to go down the back. I'm just going to head in this way. I'd never been here before, I just looked at it on Google. I don't know anything about this place. All those I know is that I've read on the internet that people have come in here and got fucked up. Oh, here it is. Found it. It wasn't those other markers. These are the headstones of the bodies from Wolston Park. This is what the whole ghost hunt, and also something more important, come in. These were the poor people that died in Wolston Park, lunatic asylum, one of the most evil lunatic asylums in the world. Now you got to remember, people were put in this asylum not even because they were crazy. Just because they had polio or something like that. Now, you imagine, like, you're a bit odd. This is, going back, you're a bit odd, something like that. You got polio, or you can't walk properly, or you're a cripple. You got put into a lunatic asylum. Woogaroo, and it's also called Wolston. And not only that, you were put through a place of sheer evil. Not even, there was no care. You got 6-year-old kids in there mixed with adults. I ghost hunted Wolston Park. I wonder if the connection will be there. The Wolston Park was where I got my first ever A-class EVP. I got 2 A-class EVPs, and they were murder by 2 different women. I kept asking what happened, and quite frankly, they were murdered. I think Wolston Park was around 120 years, and 50,000 people died there. 50,000 people died in Wolston Park. You're looking at 190, 200 a year. They died. It wasn't through natural causes. Hang on, I just got to keep turning the light off because cars keep coming through. And someone will probably got nothing better to do and call the cops. Alright, well, guys, it's probably a bit late, but the government actually apologised, but I just read it again. They only apologised to the children that were there, because, I mean, you're talking, you got to remember, like, the history of Wolston Park is appalling. It was a man-made cesspit of evil, and these people suffered beyond what you can imagine. These cars are bugger off stuff. And here we go, there's more. Look. These are all the people that were moved from the Wolston Park Asylum Cemetery and put here. I bet you they're all not here either. And they had records of these people's names. Bloody noise. They had records of these people's names. And they've just got numbers. A99, A68. I mean, come on. These people were treated like absolute shit. There's more of them over here. There's a memorial. Brisbane Mental Health Hospital. In memory of all those who died at Brisbane Mental Hospital and whose final resting place is unknown. From 1945 to 1950, approximately 200 bodies were exhumed from the Brisbane Mental Hospital Cemetery and transferred here to Goodna General Cemetery. All of the BMH Cemetery concrete grave markers without further remains transitioned to the Goodna General Cemetery in the early 1970s, and in 2006 the Trust received government funding to construct the commemorative space to remember all those who died. In loving memory of Agnes Elizabeth Cadats, 1915 to 1932, beloved sister of Beryl, admitted into care age 16, lost but not forgotten. Now, what was done to these people is beyond anything you could imagine. And I'm going to sit down and read you some stories about this, because it's an absolute fucking disgrace what happened to these people. And we're not talking not that long ago either. Here's more. Could have at least written their fucking names. Alpha A329, A2039, A380. And these people were fucking humans, man. They had names. A570. Hopefully I can sit on this rock. It's not a marker in there. Now we're talking 6-year-olds. 6-year-olds were sent to this mental facility, drugged, raped, abused, murdered. 50,000 people died in that asylum. The records are up. I looked at the records in the 1940s and it was like between 150 and 200 people a year. There was people there that had to stay there 3-4 years of their life who weren't ever once declared insane. So I think this apology is awesome to the children, but I think they should have just written it for everybody. So I don't know if there's any children here, or this will be for all of you. This was written by the government. I'm not sure whether he's got compensated or not, but I know I've read on the internet that there's people out there still fighting for compensation. To those who, as children in the care of the state Queensland, suffered in any way while resident in adult mental health facility, suffered in any way. I'll read your story next, man. The government acknowledges that the apology offered in 1999 following the Forder inquiry did not extend to those who, while under a care and control or care and protection order of the state, suffered maltreatment or neglect or were inappropriately placed in Queensland adult mental health facility. We acknowledge the special vulnerability of children in the state care who was treated as inpatients in the adult mental health system and who, through the circumstance of their placements, witnessed or experienced maltreatment or neglect. We acknowledge that for some, such placements led to an incorrect diagnosis of mental illness, which has had significantly impact on their lives. We sincerely apologise to all those who, as children, suffering in any way while a resident in adult mental health facilities, and express deep sorrow and regret for the hurt and distress suffered by those who were victims of abuse. We recognise the value of formal reconciliation experiences in healing and hurt some have suffered, and undertake to plan these in consultation with those who are harmed in care. We recognise the value of we are committed to doing all we reasonably can to ensure that children in our care are protected from harm as a paramount consideration. Further, we are committed to ongoing review and improvement of services for children and families. The Honourable Paul Lucas MP, Deputy Premier Minister for Health, The Honourable Karen Struther MP, Minister for Community Services and Housing, Minister for Women. Well, there you go, guys. That was sort of for the children, but for all of you as well. That was an apology from the government. Now let's get this right. You had to actually have an inquiry. You know, I mean, I don't give a shit. I don't give a fucking shit what your rules were back then, or what happened in history or time. You don't put kids in with mentally unstable adults. That shouldn't even... It just shouldn't happen, full stop. The adults were treated like shit, the kids were treated like shit. They put kids in with adults who are mentally disturbed. I mean, I can't think of anything more evil. And don't give me this, you know, this shit of, oh, it was a couple of bad eggs. Wollston Park was run by bad eggs. Because there's no way you could work in that environment and not know what was going on. There's no way. And I'm sure there was a lot of people that did do good work at Wollston Park and did do their best and cared for the mentally unwell. But when you watch a 6-year-old get put into a cell with 4 or 5 men, or a room, or women, I mean, when you're born, you've got an automatic, you know, system in your body that tells you what's right and what's wrong in a high level degree like that. I'm going to read one more thing. Before I'm not going to hang around here too much because I'm not going to ghost on it. I just want to tell you the history of these graves right here. I'm going to read this. So that apology before was for these children. And I'll read you a story from one of the children. It was inside the now derelict Wollston Park Centre for Mental Health that a 6-year-old boy outsmarted his abusers and made a break for freedom. If you want to check out the Wollston Park, I explored it during the day and I ghost hunted it at night. The Waco Asylum was home to children who, now adults, share close to 6 decades of dark secrets and stories of torture, horror and abuse from the 1950s to the 1980s. Now this is going to give you the true horror of this place. One of the patients, who was sent by court order when he was about 6 or 7, spent months inside the centre infatuated with its imminent escape home to country Queensland. It is a story of escape that reveals the true agony and torment children and adults were subjected to. With records destroyed and the asylum rarely spoken about, the man isn't sure how old he was when he was sent, but he was a young patient during his time at the centre. It was the same young boy who beat the staff at their own game. A psychiatrist would hold up his hand to me with his fingers in the peace sign and say, "How many fingers do you see?" And I would say 5, and he was obviously unhappy with that. Sometimes I could see his other hand on the table, so I would say 10. And sometimes there would be a person walking in the corridor with their hands in their pockets and another hand holding something, so I would answer 15, depending on how many hands I could see. the boy said. They taught me the definition of being mad was believing two incompatible things at the same time. So I was trying to demonstrate to them I was not mad, because when I would go home and see my parents and my sister and play with my dog and all sorts of things a kid wanted to do, I got him to understand. I held up my hand and got the answer from him. I pointed at my fingers that were folded down. I would tell him, you told me you couldn't only see two fingers, and now you're telling me you can see five? You believe two incompatible things at the same time. You must be mad. I was answering exactly the question he was asking. The next time we went to the panel meeting, we played that out to them. Then that was how I got out of there. I finally got them to understand I wasn't mad. Among the stories of torment, the man says he witnessed systematic rape, intellectual abuse and physical torture. He was issued with adult-sized underwear and no other clothes. This boy is like 6 or 7 years old. He slept in bunkers with a window into a corridor he was too short to see out of, and was forced to stand in the doorway, ask permission to use the bathroom. They did electric shock thing to me. They would cart me off to a room, tie me down in a chair and put this thing on my head and turn the electricity current on. My head was so small they had to adjust it. It didn't fit properly, he said. I remember the blue flash from it arcing across and the horrible smell of burning hair. They would tell me that was going to make me better, but frankly I think it was more of a matter of social control. I experienced it as a form of torture where they would keep doing it until I was answering the questions in a way they wanted me to answer them. They'd strap me down and put me on some weird medication stuff and put something in my mouth. I was convinced they were orally raping me. They'd strap me down because when they took hold of me, I'd resist as hard as I could. When he tied me down and I broke through that, there was a thing that went in your mouth to stop you biting your tongue. He said he spent every night blocking out the sounds of women being raped, sexually abused. On the afternoon shift, between 4 in the afternoon and midnight, that's when most of the bad stuff happened. I was bath time and meal time, so they were stripping people off and hosing them. That's when they had them naked and most vulnerable, he said. It was just the most incredible screams you would have out of any horror movie coming from the other building. And I'll say that one again. It was just the most incredible screams you would have out of a horror movie coming out from the other building. I would cover my ears and get taught to ignore it. You'd have to live with it. It happens every night. There was one night it didn't happen, and it was pretty weird. It was one, I think, Good Friday and a special occasion. It stood out because of the lack of screams that night. I asked, what is wrong? And there was no screams tonight. There was a young lady who there was something supposedly a bit different about her. She was around 17 or 18, and a couple of the male mental health workers had taken a liking to her, and they were on a systematic, regular basis were raping her, including in front of me. I saw it happen. The man said patients were issued a number they were expected to respond to, and one psychologist gave him the alias name Bert. I had a psychiatrist allocated to me, a doctor, and he never smiled. He wouldn't refer to me as my name. It was a patient number. It was considered unprofessional to refer to a patient with a name as unscientific. It was seen as getting too involved with the patients by calling them by their name, he said. I was expected to answer to that number. 5 decades later, it was 35 years after he was released from Wellston Park Centre for Mental Health when the man who was a patient as a child received support. The man now lives almost 60, lives in Perth, having fled the horror he was subjected to as a child in Queensland. He's still in therapy.